Okay, guys, welcome back to the new lesson. And this is our second lecture. And in this one, we're going to talk about, right, variables and their data types. So I've just written all of their definitions, how to use them, their syntax, and we're just going to learn each of them. So first of all, we should learn about variables. So what are variables basically? Well, a variable is a location in memory, RAM, right? Memory here means RAM, which is a temporary memory, in which we can store different types of data. So variable is a specific location in which you can store your data, and that location is present in RAM, right? So when we declare a variable, some space is assigned to it in RAM in which we can store data. So when we declare a variable, basically some of space is assigned to it in which we can store data, right? We use variables. Now the question arises, why do we use variables? We use variables when we have to store a huge data. For example, student names of a class, right? So student names of a class, for example, we have a huge class and there are several students. So you don't have to save their name one by one. You can just give them different variables and store all of their names. So this is just a common example. When we use it practically, you will know the value of a variable. So if you guys have any question, up till now, you're free to ask. Just go to the chat option and ask your question. I hope variables are clear. A variable is a specific location in which we store our data, different types of data. So when we declare a variable, some space is assigned to it. So in order to save or store data in it, and we use variables in order to store a huge data. And another use of variables, why do we use variables, is because when we store something in a variable, we can actually manipulate that variable later on in our program. That's also one of the use of a variable. All right, float means I'm just going down below, but we're just going to do it step by step, all right? So you guys don't have to be confused. So this is all about variables, and you should know that a variable has a specific name. We make a variable with a unique name. Two variables cannot be of the same name. We have to use different names for different variables. Now let's talk about data type. We're just going to do all of these practically, but this is the theory first. So what is a data type? The type of data is known as data type. As we said earlier, that we store data in a variable. So the data type is the type of data that you store in that variable. We use different data types to store different type of data in it. As I said earlier, when you declare a variable, you also have to tell the compiler that I want to store this type of data in this variable. So the compiler will know that this variable will only hold that specific type of data. For example, int, float, and char. So what are the basic types of commonly used, you can say, types of data types? We have three. The first one is integer. It should be represented by int. The second one is float. You just have to write it float in small alphabets, and character. This is a third one, and you just have to represent it with char, right? So we'll have to use these variables. We're just going to work with it in a program, so that then this will be clear to all of you guys. So what is variable declaration? Variable declaration is all about when you tell the compiler that I want to store this type of data, any specific type of data in that specific variable. For example, int. So this is the variable, this is the data type of variable x. X is any name. X is the name of a variable. You can type here a, b, anything, right? It all depends on you. So int here is the type, right? Int, as you guys can see on the screen, int here is the data type, and the variable is x. X is the name of a variable, and then we put semicolon at the end of a statement. Now let's talk about variable initialization. Variable initialization is a process when you assign value to a declared variable. As you guys can see, I have declared this variable. Now this x holds none of the value. So now I want to store value in this variable x. So I will just have to type that variable name. Then I will use this operator, which is called assignment operator. And then you will just have to add that value to that variable so that it can store in the x variable, right? And then you will use terminator operator. Now let's go back to our program and just start working with it. How to declare variables and how to use it in our program. So this is the main structure of program that we have discussed in the previous class. So I'm just not going to revise it again. All right. If you didn't watch the first lecture, you should go to our YouTube channel, and from there you can easily watch our first lecture. So this is the second lecture, and now we're just working with data types. So first of all, I will work with integer data type. So now I want to store a variable. I want to declare a variable, which is int, and the variable name, for example, is x, right? And then I will put this operator, which is terminator. And then I want to declare a second variable, int y, right? So I have declared these two variables, but the thing is that I didn't assign any value to it. So now I want to assign value to it. So I will just type this x variable, right? You don't have to type int here again because it's already been declared. Now we're going to initialize value to the variable x. So x, assignment operator, then enter your desired number, right? For example, 10, right? And we have y equals to, for example, 5, right? And now I just want to show these values on the screen, but I don't have to use 10 and 5 inside my cout. I will be calling these values through these variables that I've just defined. Cout, which is used for displaying anything on your screen, and then you don't have to use double quotes. You just have to type that variable name and then this operator, which is terminator. So let's save our program, go to the execute button, compile and run. And let's see what we get on the screen. So here's a problem. The problem is that I have declared this variable, but didn't show it on screen. So I just have to show this value as well, right? So now let me save it again. Let me compile it. Now it's compiling, and now let me run it. It's done. As you can see, 10 and 5 on the screen, right? But there's no space between them. I just have to make a space between them. So between these two functions, I will write another cout, and in this one, I have to enter space so that I can get a little gap between these two values. So let me compile it again, and then let me run it. As you can see on the screen, I've got 10 and 5. The 10 value was stored in x variable, and the 5 value was stored in y variable. That's why when I just displayed the x here, the x variable, I got 10 on my screen because 10 has been stored in x variable. And when I printed the y variable, I've got 5 because I have stored 5 in y variable. Now we have to know about integers. What type of data is integer? Integers is any non-decimal number. So what is non-decimal number? A non-decimal number is the one in which there's no point, in which there's no dot. For example, 3.14, so this is not integer. 5.4, this is also not integer. The integers are 10, 100, minus 10, anything including 0. These all are integers. But when we have decimal in it, when we have floating point in a value, then that is called float data type. So I guess integers are clear. Integer data type is the one which is non-decimal, in which we don't have any dot. These are called integers. So when you have to store that integer in a variable, you should be using int, which represents integer data type. I hope this is clear. Now we're going to talk about, or we're just going to work with float. So as I said earlier, float is the data type in which you can store a decimal value. For example, I've declared two variables, float x and float y. So now I have to store decimal value in variable x and also in variable y. So let's just do it. In x variable, I want to store 3.15, and in y variable, let's go with 9.8. So these are two floating values. These variables, x and y, are having float data types. So I have to store float values or decimal values in these declared variables, as you guys can see on the screen. And then I have printed the x value on the screen, then a little gap between them, and then the value of y. So let me compile it and run it, see what we get on the screen. So as you guys can see, I've got 3.15, which was stored in x variable, and 9.8, which was stored in y variable. These are called floating or float data type, and these values are called decimal or floating values because it has a dot in it, as you guys can literally see. This was the second data type. If you guys have any question up till now, you guys go to the chat option, go and ask your question. Thank you. Now let's talk about the third type, which is commonly used, the third data type, which is commonly used, that is character, and is represented by char. So first of all, you should know about character data type. Character data type is any alphabet or any character enclosed in single quotes. For example, I have A enclosed in single quotes. For example, X enclosed in single quotes. So they are called, A and X are called characters. Both are characters, and each of them is called character, right? This is how we declare a variable having character data type. Let's work with it. I want to declare the first variable, which is char. As I said here in this theory, that to represent character data type, we have to use char. So let's go back here, and then I want to declare two variables having character data type. So now I cannot store any digits or any numerals in these two variables because these variables are going to hold only characters. So for example, I want to store character A in the first one in the X variable and character B or small b in the second variable. Then I want to print the result on the screen. So let's compile it and run it. So as you guys can see on the screen, I've got my result. The X holds character A and Y holds character B. This is all about character data type of any variable. You have to store a single character that you can find on your keyboard. It's not all about just alphabets. You can even print anything. For example, a person sign. It will also be declared, it will also be considered as a character. So as you guys can see, I got no error and it's working fine. I've got percentage symbol and then B was stored in variable Y. So this is the character data type of a variable. We guys use these three types commonly, but there are also some more, but that will be discussed in upcoming sessions. Hopefully this is clear for you guys. Let me revise all of this. Let me conclude it. What is a variable? A variable is a location, a specific location in which you can store data. When we declare a variable, some space is assigned to it in RAM in which we store the data. We have different types of data types, right? Like integer, float, and character. Integer are non-decimal values. They only hold non-decimal values. And the float are the opposite of integers, means that you can store a decimal value in a float data type variable. And the third one was character. Character is when a single character is enclosed in single quotes. That's called a character data type or a character variable. And this is the method, this is the syntax of initializing a variable. Why do we use variable, or why do we use data types? In order to tell the compiler what type of data is going to hold this specific variable. For example, here integer, so X variable is going to hold integer data type. Okay, the type of the value that I should be storing in X variable is going to be an integer. Otherwise, an error will arise. And this is how we assign value to a variable. For example, X equals to 10, so 10 will be stored in the X variable. And you can also just directly follow this one, which is the integer is the data type of X variable. And then at the time of declaration, I'm storing value in it. You guys can check it out. Integer is the data type, X is any variable name, then assignment operator, then I store 10 in this X variable. So whenever I'll be using X variable, it means I'll be actually working on integer 10. So this is all about data types and variable. A short overview. Hope you guys enjoyed this lesson. And for more lessons, join our WhatsApp group, right? If you guys haven't joined the group, let me know. And you guys can also join our YouTube channel where I will be uploading all these lectures that I take on Zoom meetings. So you guys, if have missed any lecture, you guys can rewatch it. Thank you for your time for watching this lecture, and I will see you next time.